Lego said no to making sets and figures based on the new Superman movie, so bootleg brands rush in to fill the gap. But are these fake figures hidden gems or total disasters? Hey, how you doing? My name's Ryan, and today I picked up these two sets of Superman figures from Mercari, and the seller, Marquis Bricks, was super fast and super kind. Our first set of figures are TP1038 from the aptly named TP brand, and why not kick things off with Superman? I'll start with the good. I think the torso design is rather well defined, with all the muscle lines having appropriate thickness, a large black outline around the logo to make it pop, and the flow from the torso to the hips to the legs is immaculate, perfectly done. It feels like one design on an action figure and not multiple pieces. That's impressive. Also impressive is the amount of coverage on these figures. It's pretty common with off-brands, but you have arm printing, leg printing, side leg printing, back printing, and even toe printing. However, while the torso balances out the amount of design on it, the legs are a bit overdone in my opinion. There are so many small lines and wrinkles that just kinda get lost in the design. And while these knockoff designers more often than not get the torso and legs right, the face is far more hit and miss. Superman, for example, has what can only be described as a cat mouth with a small indentation in the center, and while the eyebrows, eyes, and mouth are in proportion with each other on the main face, on the alternate face, the head is a bit too squished, the eyes a bit too low, and the mouth a bit too weird looking. But what about the accessories? That's usually where these companies make their best pieces. Here we get two Energy Blast accessories in clear, and while I'm not sure they work all that well for Superman, if you have Sue Storm from the Fantastic Four, they work perfectly for her. The one accessory I think is rather clever and creative is the cape piece here, almost in mid swoosh and the hardened plastic holding its shape. And while I might have preferred having one normal cape and one mid swoosh cape, it's kind of cool to have a piece like this for posing purposes and photography. Overall, a good Superman figure that could certainly use a face swap. But how about his arch nemesis, Lex Luthor? The torso and leg print here is really immaculate and balances the amount of small lines and large lines perfectly. The coloring of the purple and green pop really well and provide enough color contrast across the entire figure. And once again, the amount of coverage overall here is rather impressive, with sides, toes, legs, no element unprinted. The accessory here is a bit of a letdown. I think it's supposed to be either kryptonite or some sort of radioactive tube, but compared to other off-brand figures, this one does feel like a bit of a letdown. But what about the face print? How does that fare? The proportions I think are a little bit off, with the entire face print being a bit too low on the head, and once again we have that cat mouth for Lex Luthor. And I gotta say, the TP Superman and Lex Luthor side by side make for a far more compelling visual than the official Superman and Lex Luthor do. But what about our next figure, Guy Gardner, Green Lantern? This figure unfortunately suffers to the low quality printing process these off-brand companies have access to, as look at the white on the torso compared to the white on the legs. The difference being, the torso piece itself is white, with the amount of coverage overall all around it make it feel like it's a multicolored high contrast piece, whereas the legs, they're a black piece of plastic. So trying to print white on it with a low quality printer, you end up with this sort of bluish gray color. As for the design itself, I think the jacket is really well done, with every wrinkle, line, and detail popping incredibly well, the green looking fantastic. The Green Lantern insignia on both the arms and the belt I think look wonderful. But for the legs, I've never been a big fan of these giant lines in dark gray taking up all the detail space. I do think it reads a bit too blocky and a bit too cartoonish. But what about the head? I think the face prints here are much better than Superman or Lex Luthor. I especially love the alternate face with this sort of half smirk. The proportions all work really well, and the mouth I think is even successful. As for the main face, it's a pretty typical but effective scowl, with one added mark on the chin that I think is a bit too low on the head. The hairpiece is perfect, and I'm sure every custom figure creator is going to use this exact hairpiece for their Guy Gardner as well. But what about the accessories? Well, we do get this minifigure posing stand in sort of a weird lime translucent green. It works relatively well, but I'm not sure just adding a lightsaber blade is the best use of this accessory. I would have attached an energy piece to that tube, kind of like what Lego does with Iron Man, to make it feel more impactful and not like a laser. But as is the case with most off-brand figures, oftentimes they don't get everything right. If the torso looks great, the legs are off. If the face is incredible, the accessory might be off. It's tough for these companies to get every checkbox entirely correct. In fact, it's tough for Lego to do that too. But can our next off-brand Superman figure thread the needle and knock it out of the park? It's Metamorpho. This is an insanely complicated design. You have the bright orange one half, you have the bright pink other half, you have the sandy leg, the clear leg with water on it, you have the hip printing that blends into the torso with the M, and I think it works really, really well, for the most part. I think the amount of hatching and line work on both sides of the torso, the orange and the purple, are a little bit too much and make the figure look a bit muddy print-wise. The face, I think, had way too many lines on it. You needed some elements of blank space to make this figure read all that more successfully, because every bit is so hyper-designed and over-designed in my opinion, the entire thing reads as a little bit too busy and a bit too muddy. I do like the bulkier arm pieces with these blades, and I especially love the clear leg piece. It's another piece that works rather well for the figure in question, but perfectly for Sue Storm from the Fantastic Four. If you just remove the print off that clear leg, you have a really nice accessory for that character. But if I'm being honest, between the official LEGO Metamorpho figure from the CMF line and this one, I kind of have to go with Legos for the better figure overall. But up next, how about another head-to-head between LEGO and TP? It's Hawkgirl. The TP figure, I think, is a rather stiff competition. This design and print job minimizes the drawbacks that off-brand figures often have. There's very little white on the legs, for example, that better blends the torso and leg print together with color contrast. All of the line work is incredibly clean and flows rather well from the torso to the legs. All the oranges pop nicely, the amount of line work and wrinkles is readable. On the arm print, you get some logos there too. The winged helmet in a pearl gold is phenomenal looking. And I was gonna review the face print, but the helmet is kind of stuck to the head, and I can't pull the helmet off without pulling the head with it, so I might need a second. Alright, the helmet is off, I can see the face print, and I'm not sure if it's the print itself or the amount of effort it took to remove the helmet that's kind of skewing my judgment, but I'm not the biggest fan of this head print on Hawkgirl. While I like the idea of the sort of half-eyed smirk, and that works rather well, the alternate head I think looks pretty terrible, with the weird teeth lines, the scrunched mouth, and the entire head really squished and moved down on the head. I get what they're trying to go for here. You want to be able to see the eyes through the helmet, and if the helmet piece is not perfectly aligned or the face print isn't perfectly aligned, it looks really strange. So when you put the helmet back on, you can't see the mouth, so the entire bottom of the helmet area is kind of blank. But what about the accessories? Well, we get two here, wings and a mace, and I gotta say, I don't really like the dark green wings for this character. Even in the movie, they're kind of more yellowish with black and other colors added in there, so to just get dark green on an off-brand figure when so many other parts are really well printed and designed is a bit of a letdown. As for the mace, yeah, it's a pretty fine mace, good piece, works well here. Now, compared to the official LEGO figure, it's a bit night and day because it's two different versions of the character, a movie redesign and the original comic design. And while I do love the torso and legs more so on the off-brand, I love the wings and helmet on the official figure. But really, it's tough to compare them apples to apples because they're so different in design. But how about a character that's never received the LEGO treatment? It's Mr. Terrific. And starting with this jacket torso, I think this is the worst out of the three we've seen so far, with the dark gray lines becoming a bit too predominant and bulky, and not having enough layering between the jacket and the shirt underneath for it to really work. While I do like the leg design, again, those kind of dark gray lines muddy the overall look. The pops of red, though, I think work rather well, and the arm printing has a really clearly legible fair play written on it. That's impressive to have a word written on the arms and have it be clearly legible. Well done. As for the face print, I think this is one of the few cases where the alternate head works much better than the main one because the alternate head shows teeth, and the block of white I think provides necessary contrast on the black T, whereas the neutral face, that dark gray mouth is barely visible. As for accessories, a silver orb and a clear power blast. Nothing really notable, but it does seem that off-brand companies like TP are allocating more of their resources and funds towards overall figure coverage rather than accessories, and that's certainly a choice you can make. For Mr. Terrific though, I don't think that choice paid off, because while the text on the arms and back is a really nice touch, the design on the face, torso, and legs I think is over-designed and not well printed. But how about a simpler character, the Engineer? This one suffers from a classic error of having way too many lines on the torso and not enough black negative space to make it read all that legibly. All these lines and web patterns, they do flow well from the torso to legs, but there's just so many of them, and it makes the torso piece feel like it's just dark gray with small touches of black, rather than black with dark gray accent lines on it. The legs, I think, are better in terms of balance between negative space and design, the arms the same way, but the overall figure just reads way too busy. Add to that a face print that is too smushed and low on the head, and a hairpiece that does look rather nice. And you're left with an engineer figure that suffers from the pitfalls off-brand companies have been facing for years. Real bummer there, but how about our last figure from this TP set, Black Noir? Or at least that's what he's referred to as in the TP listing, but really it's Ultraman. And this figure has a lot better balance of negative space and line work compared to the engineer. There's larger swatches of black that allow the lines to feel more like accent pieces and not like total coverage. Granted, there still are a bunch of dark gray bold lines that kind of muddy the overall look of this figure, and I get what they're going for here though, because they can't use white because they have to have that color reserved for the giant U in the center, and that pops incredibly well, almost too much. The face print though, I think this is the best one out of the entire bunch. The placement of the eyes, the contrast with the gray and the white. Now, it's the simplest of all the face prints, but they got this one right. Looking at Ultraman overall, I do think he's a bit of a letdown with the torso and legs not having enough contrast between the black and the accent lines for it to really work. These TP figures are a bit more miss than hit in my opinion. While Superman, Lex Luthor, and Guy Gardner are standouts, some of the other figures like Metamorpho, the Engineer, and Ultraman are way too over-designed in my opinion. But we still have one more batch of off-brands. It's G0139 from company GH, which I believe is a rebrand of XINH, which was one of the most prolific off-brand figure creators ever, and our first figure is Superman. And this is an incredible Superman torso and leg design. I love the subtle but still visible dark blue lines on the torso. The logo pops wonderfully, the belt is clear, the red is beautiful, the flow from the torso to the legs is perfect, the arm printing is great. This is a fantastic rendering of Superman's torso and legs. Really well done here. Although the face does bring the whole figure down a bit. I'm not sure what this face is supposed to be, whether it's stern or confused, and honestly, it just kind of reads as wrong. The alternate head is no better with the bloody marks on it. Speaking of the back, I love the logo printed on the Superman cape, and while I'm not the biggest fan of plastic capes overall, I do like you can print on it, and this Superman emblem is a great example of what you can do with it. As for what I'd replace that cape with, well, look at the accessory that came with the Superman figure. It's Crypto. Now, this guy here is based on the pre-existing Lego figure with the larger white dog mold, as opposed to the smaller one featured in the film. However, this Crypto comes with a cloth red cape with the Superman logo printed on it, and that's a fantastic accessory to have. This could go well with any Superman figure, real or off-brand, and elevate it that much more. That cape is worth the price of admission alone. But what about our next figure, Lex Luthor? This version depicts a more boring black suit Lex Luthor with a tie, jacket, and white button down, and honestly, it looks pretty terrible. All the printing is smudged, the line work really is kind of sloppy, the color contrast is poor, the white printing is poor, the face print is poor. It looks like the design was hand-drawn by a Sharpie or painted on. And honestly, knowing how these off-brand companies operate, there is a non-0% chance that XINH or GH didn't find someone who did paint a Lex Luthor figure, copy that design, and then print it onto a figure. That could happen. But whatever happened, it's the detriment of this figure because it looks pretty terrible. But what about Guy Gardner's Green Lantern? This version opts for smaller lines but less of them than the TP version, and I think it looks pretty fantastic, at least on the torso. The legs have poor color contrast with the white printing on black, but the pops of green I think look rather nice. The Green Lantern emblem on the arm is fantastic, even given how tiny it is, and the torso design on the front honestly could feel like an actual Lego torso. It's that well handled. The face though, I'm not the biggest fan of. I think the line work is too subtle and small, the eyes a bit too far apart, and we do have that cat mouth again. The alternate face is even worse, with those teeth being barely visible and way too low on the head. The hair is the same mold as the TP figure, but in dark tan. But the one element this figure does way better than the previous one is the accessory. The Green Lantern ring in translucent green with the printed emblem on the tile look fantastic and perfect, to be honest. It's way better than a weird teal laser if you ask me. But what about Hawk Girl? Again, like Green Lantern, this figure opts for fewer but thinner lines, and it looks rather clean. I do think the orange color is a bit more subdued and reads more like brown than orange, but the thinner and cleaner line work allow for more negative space of white and black to have this figure read better overall. The helmet is a different, taller, and wider mold than the TP, with molded wings on the actual head too. Well done. But when you pop the helmet off, you see the face print is terrible. The eyes way too high and the mouth way too low. Granted, this is GH's way of having the face print be visible underneath the helmet, but maybe design the face print first, nail that down, and then make the helmet second. As for the wings, I love the mold on them, the coloring, the black detailing, and all of the actual molded feathers look fantastic. I think I prefer this second Hawk Girl to the first one, but not by much. Okay, what about Mr. Terrific? And here I think we have a similar level of line work to the TP figure, and it still kind of reads as a bit too over-designed and a bit too detailed with these thin lines. While the red accents are nice, the white is a bit more subdued and light gray. Once again, trying to print white accents on a black figure is tough to do with a cheap printer. This Mr. Terrific also has Fair Play written rather legibly on the arms, and Terrific written on the back of the torso. As for the face, I think it's a bit more legible than the previous figure, with the dark gray eyes and mouth popping a bit more, but it's not by much, and honestly, I think the red eyes on the TP figure allowed for a bit more contrast on the face to have it read more like a face. Also, we got no accessories here. In fact, very few of the GH or TP figures actually got new accessory pieces, which is a bit of a letdown because these off-brand companies used to thrive on their incredibly detailed and accurate accessory pieces like Thor's hammer or Stormbreaker or the arc reactor. Maybe it's a budget issue, maybe they're trying to allocate more time into the print and design work, but given how most of these figures are still pretty hit and miss, I don't think that was the right choice. But how about our last figure? Can that save us? It's Ultraman. And this figure is pretty bad in my opinion, worse than the previous Ultraman, with the entire design being one color, and it's not even white, it's this kind of lavender light purple design. All of the line work becomes very confusing when it's all the same color, and even the U doesn't stand out as much as it should. The eyes on the head are way too low, and the overall figure just reads as muddy and purple rather than clean, crisp, and white. So despite a rebrand and a supposed renewed focus on design over accessories, these GH figures are still kind of a letdown. The best parts of the figures outside of Superman's torso are the accessories: Krypto's cape, Green Lantern's ring, Hawkgirl's wings. After reviewing hundreds of off-brand figures over the years, I do wonder if these companies would benefit from just making accessories. I think they'd be more well-liked, and I do think they would avoid the legal issues of LEGO's minifigure copyright. As for these Superman figures, it seems to me that TP and GH almost needed LEGO to lead the design charge as to how they would have made those figures before these companies were inspired to make their own. Because left to their own devices, they end up with pretty mediocre designs and poor quality prints. But what do you guys think? What was your favorite and least favorite off-brand Superman figure, and should LEGO have made official figures for DC Studios' Superman? Big thank you to my channel members for supporting me and making videos like this possible, and as always, if you like this video, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and thanks for watching.